Are you tired of province systems where every city is connected to at least one or two other tiny cities that never seem to amount to anything? Are you fed up with only being able to raise like 6 lousy buildings in your major cities and even less in the smaller ones? Do you want to enjoy Total War again and feel that depth and immersion you felt when you were a wee babe who just discovered this series? If so, you need to know about the singular best feature of perhaps the most immersive mod for Total War Attila, Medieval Kingdom's entirely unique province system, which in fact is no province system as such at all, and I'll tell you why. So slap a like on the video, consider subscribing, join the Discord, and let's get going. In fact, I'll tell you right away. Medieval Kingdom's 1212 cities have been completely decoupled from each other, meaning that this is a Total War Attila experience which suddenly feels a lot more like the good old days where cities were exactly that. Cities, entities in their own right, and not for some reason mangled together in a system where only one city in the province could truly thrive. So why is this so awesome? For several reasons, of course, you silly Billy, and don't worry, I'll tell you why. The modders of MK have accomplished an absolutely gigantic feat here, managing to be the first to do what nobody else have done. The way it was done before and in every Total War game between Rome 2 and Pharaoh is that provinces is the most important unit of measurements in terms of your empire. Because cities are gathered together in provinces, reaping the province's benefits through edicts or increased public order was reliant on you holding every city in the province, or indeed the major city and the minor towns. Now, every province is its own city and vice versa, meaning that public order, the makeup of religions, food supply, MK's own population system, and even your edicts and governors are all tied to just one city at a time. This might sound minor, but think about it. If you're like me and you love your in-depth, immersive, and truly grand campaigns that require strategy and planning, you now get to manage every single city on this map, just like you used to be able to do in games like Rome and Medieval 2. And because MK1212 expands the number of available edicts and governors available to you at various Imperium levels, it's actually a lot more fun to play around with those features as well. It means that when you actually conquer a city, that you feel like you've accomplished something great, that you've made headway instead of being in some weird situation where you can't fully manage your part of the province because some goofball in another castle and another faction controls the other part. To me, this is a return to a more human game design, to a system that feels intuitive rather than arbitrary or gamified, and it's part of what makes me sink so many hours into MK1212 when I sit down with it. However, the other major aspect of this new quote-unquote province system is how buildings work. You know how ever since Empire, which came out all the way back in 2009, how we've been restricted to basically just a handful of buildings per major city? This was always a bad system, and I'll keep believing that no matter what. I mean, compared to the awesome freedom of old, this was an overcorrection, an attempt to make the player decide on what to build and what to forego. But again, it's purely another gamification aspect, something that might make sense in theory, but which is not fun at all in practice. Enter Medieval Kingdoms once more then, because now our one-city provinces have been expanded to allow for up to 10 buildings at once, which is a significant increase from vanilla. And you truly do feel those extra slots since, and this ties into the one-city provinces, every city has them. Of course, they might not begin with more than 2 or 3 or 5, but that's the fun of it, because this allows every single city on the map to expand past being a small town. But this also works great with Attila's base growth mechanic, since as you might expect, it's not necessarily easy to reach major city levels and open up those new building slots. Indeed, you need to manage your city right and create a foundation for proper growth over time. This makes fertility and good governance as important as ever, as well as long-term planning and prosperity, since reaching those new level building slots will be progressively more difficult, seeing as ever more people are required to unlock them. However, once you do it, it really feels like nothing else, and I can't express the joy and shared strategic pleasure of finally feeling like Total War's campaigns have soul again, and really, it doesn't take much. Because the base is there. The fact is though that I feel like no Total War campaign have been the same since they changed up these systems, and simply adding more options like this to customize your cities, well, it makes a huge difference. It actually allows massive empires to feel truly powerful again, and more than that, it allows for smaller realms to play tall, to create bastions of prosperity or true border castles depending on what you need. It brings a level of depth that no Total War game has been able to offer since 2006, purely based on the detrimental revamp of the building system, and that is something special. What you'll notice too is that Medieval Kingdoms goes even further. Instead of using building images from the main game or other Total War games, the modders made the choice to use an entirely new set of images that look and feel uniform, and that impressively managed to unify a stylistic and informative look into one. It's a more colorful look than vanilla Attila, but infinitely more realistic looking than the abstract flat building icons in games like Rome 2 and Warhammer, and gives Attila a much needed facelift in terms of its cities and buildings. These two features that nevertheless coexist, the new 1 city province system and the 10 building slots per city for every city, does create a Total War experience that feels so different than any other in the past 15 years. And if you haven't experienced this yet, it truly feels like taking some of the best features of old Total War, but putting them into Attila, and getting a whole new game. And that's not even mentioning that we're getting an actual new game here set in the Middle Ages essentially. This feature alone does for me make Medieval Kingdoms 1212 perhaps the best mod ever made relative to the base game itself, since CA themselves were the ones who screwed this up in the first place. This is the main reason for me making this video today, this absolutely awesome new city system. But there are even more reasons to be hyped for the future of Medieval Kingdoms, because ever since modders unlocked the ability to mod the campaign map itself, the modders of MK have been teasing the next massive update, the campaign map one. While they're seemingly not aiming to truly recreate the map itself in whole, what we'll see is arguably more important, since Attila's map is already large. The addition of completely new cities and the replacement of current city locations. These two might be more important than you believe. For one, MK1212 is planning to add new lands and cities to Norway, allowing for the return of this faction now as a settled one, which definitely warms my heart personally. But more cities will be added around the world as well to fill in empty spots and make this an even more vibrant campaign. In addition, Attila wasn't originally made for this medieval world, but nevertheless did leave out some very important cities, perhaps the most important one being Paris for whatever reason. And of course, Paris is an important place in the medieval era, not least of all to France, one of the most important kingdoms in Europe. For this next update then, cities will be relocated to their actual place, or indeed, new cities will be added, meaning Paris will finally be in its rightful place. To me, this is going to bring a whole new level of immersion to Medieval Kingdoms 1212, since thus far, I've personally kind of held off playing a faction like France because of this fact. Hopefully the wait for this isn't too long, but that's not to say MK1212 isn't more than playable already now. In fact, it's like I've said ad nauseum, one of the best mods I've ever played. And I think you should try it out too, if only for its awesome building system. Let me know your thoughts on the building and province systems of Total War and MK1212 in the comments, and make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Cheers!